This is your host, Town Manager John Potter, broadcasting from the BCTV studios in Brattleboro, Vermont, with another edition of the Town Matters podcast. This podcast is a brief update on what's happening in Brattleboro town government. Today, I'll give you an update on the Selectboard's meetings that were held in November, basically a slew of them. There was one on Tuesday, November 4th, a regular meeting, one on Wednesday, November 12th, a budget listening session, and another regular meeting on Tuesday, November 18th, and finally another special meeting on Thursday, November 20th. I'll go over those, and then I'll review the agenda for the next regular Select Board meeting that will be on Tuesday, December 2nd at 6:15 p.m. in the Select Board meeting room at 230 Main Street. So the first regular meeting in November was on Tuesday, November 4th, and on the consent agenda that night, there were 4 items. One was removed from the consent agenda for discussion later, so I'll cover that in a minute. But the 3 items on consent that were approved were approval for staff to apply for a courier grant and approval of a second-class liquor license at Mac's Convenience Store and approval of an entertainment license for Hannah Ruth Massage and Movement. And that consent agenda was passed by a 5-0 vote. Under regular business on November 4th, the first thing up was a presentation by the Public Works staff and a discussion about the solid waste implementation plan. And at this meeting, the Public Works staff explained what the revised approach to solid waste and the Casella contract looked like. It included the town starting to do curbside collection of compost in-house, which will save a significant amount of money over the Casella contract. No motions were required for this item on the 4th, and it was just an initial presentation of information about the new solid waste approach. Following that item, the proposed fiscal year 27 general fund budget was presented to the board, and there were a number of questions and discussion about the proposed general fund budget. This is sort of the kickoff that will be followed by a number of department by department budget looks, kind of at a more detailed level, but this was sort of the initial conversation about the budget. Following that, the monthly and quarterly review of the fiscal 26 budget was given, and finance consultant Bonnie Batchelder gave an overview of the first quarter of fiscal 26, which appeared to be in order, and there were several questions regarding overtime and EMS receivables, and no motion was required or taken on that item. Next up was Fire Department quarterly report, and Fire Chief Jay Simons discussed the quarterly report for the fire department, and there was a conversation about the faster response times that the town is seeing from the fire department. There was a question about hanging banners and several other issues that were reported on in the fire department's written report. No motion was required or taken on that item. The next issue on November 4th was a review of the EMS billings and collection policy, and the fire chief went over the current EMS billings and collections policy, which was approved last year, and did not recommend any changes to that policy. So the board appeared to agree with that and didn't take any motions, and that will continue to be the town's active policy until it's reviewed again, probably a year from now. Next, there were committee appointments, and Stephen Laput was appointed to the Development Review Board for a 3-year term, and that was the only appointment made at the meeting. And then the final item on November 4th was a parking lot snow removal contract that was pulled from consent, and under this item, DPW Director Dan Tyler and Highway Supervisor Darren Pacheco discussed the contract that the town does for parking lot snow removal over the winter, and after some discussion, it was moved to approve the award of the 2025 winter snow removal of Elm Street, Spring Street, Central Station, and Station 2 to Slate Rock Timber, and clearance of the Municipal Center, Preston Lot, Harmony Lot, Harris Lot, Gibson Aiken Center, Highgrove Lot, Transportation Center, and Police Department to Belco Excavation. And that motion was passed by a vote of 5-0, and that closed out the meeting on November 4th. Next up, the board board met again in a special meeting on November 12th for a budget listening session. And at this meeting, there were several suggested questions that the board had, but they really wanted to hear from anyone about any issue regarding the proposed FY27 budget. And there was a discussion at the meeting. If you're interested, the video is posted online, but there was discussion about health insurance options. There was a discussion about past budgets and what staff salaries are. There was a discussion about the solid waste program and the proposal to do curbside compost collection in-house. There was a conversation about the art space at 69A Elliott and the budget for community organizations like that. There was a discussion about the human services budgets, kind of same thing. Then the police and fire department budgets was talked about, and I think that was pretty much it in terms of the high-level items that were raised at the listening session. The board then met again at a regular meeting on Tuesday, November 18th. And at this meeting, there was 2 items on the consent agenda: a first and third class liquor license and an outside consumption permit for Marigold Restaurant, and a site visit and public hearing announced for Bittersweet Lane and also Wikipedia Hill, 2 roads that the board will be visiting on January 20th with a site visit at both locations and public hearings at their meeting on January 20th. Under regular business for the November 18th meeting, the DPW staff came back to talk about the solid waste management program and the solid waste contract. And there was quite a bit of conversation about the proposed program and the cost of the pay-as-you-throw bags and the use of carts for recycling with the automatic trucks. And there was an initial motion to approve the implementation of the program. And following that motion, board member offered an amendment to strike the curbside collection of compost from the program. That amendment was discussed extensively, and in a vote of 1 to 4, that amendment did not pass. Then another board member made a motion to adjust the pay-as-you-throw bag fees, increasing them from $2 to $4.50 for yellow bags and $3 to $6.75 for purple bags, but then increasing them again an additional 10 cents for each yellow bag and 15 cents for each purple bag, and for those amounts to go to a dedicated fund for a staff-developed program that will subsidize bag purchases by low-income residents. The additional costs to the bag prices for the low-income resident fund passed by a vote of 4 to 1, and the overall motion, which included that, and I'll now read that in full, was to approve an increase from $2 to $4.60 for yellow bags and $3 to $6.90 for purple bags, with the transition to take place during January 2026, and to designate 10 cents of each yellow bag sale, 15 cents of each purple bag sale to a dedicated fund for a staff-developed program that will subsidize bag purchases by low-income residents. And that motion passed by a vote of 4 to 1. Following solid waste, there was consideration for approval of a fireworks contract for the 4th of July fireworks. And the Parks Director, Carol Lalott, told the board that due to many of the fireworks coming from China and them being hit hard by the tariffs, that the minimum cost for doing a 4th of July fireworks show this year had increased from $10,000 to $20,000. She talked about how the town seeks and receives many donations to help fund this, but that the contract needs to be put in place now in order to secure company on the 4th of July to put the fireworks on. And so there was a motion to enter into a contract with North Star Fireworks, known as Pyrotechnico, for $20,000 to provide a fireworks display on the 4th of July 2026. and that motion passed by a vote of 4-1. Following that, there was a discussion of trespass claims that were made by a select board member against town staff, and there was a conversation about no trespass and what a no trespass order is and what the approach around issuing trespass orders consists of. Police Chief Hardy presented some data on the numbers of trespass orders that are active and the number that are issued in like a typical year. So if you're interested, follow up on that. There was no motion required or made for this item. And following that, there was an in-depth presentation and discussion about the police department's fiscal year 27 general fund budget. After that presentation, there was discussion and questions about dispatch, about the possibility of outside revenue being generated by the police department and collecting more revenue in general. What else? There was talk about overtime in the police budget, about staffing for the BRAT team and HCRS liaisons. There was also discussion about the capital budget and the police vehicles in the capital budget. And I think that was pretty much it on the police budget. This was just an in-depth presentation about what's in that budget, and no motion was required or made. A similar presentation followed on November 18th with the fire department's fiscal 27 general fund budget. And the fire department gave a presentation including a proposal in the proposed budget to move from a 56-hour work week to a 42-hour work week for firefighter EMTs, and quite a bit of conversation about the 42 versus the 56-hour work week and the importance of it for retaining staff and being able to recruit staff. And there was a number of other issues raised and discussed, including EMS revenues. So no motion was taken on this either, and that closed out the meeting on November 18th. The board met again later that week on Thursday, November 20th, for a presentation on the townwide reappraisal, which is just kicking off now. And anyone who's interested in learning more about reappraisal and how that may affect their property is welcome to view the video of that presentation. And you can find that on brattleboro.gov/reappraisal. Boy, I think that's all the meetings in November. I've tried to summarize them as quickly as I could. The next select board meeting is a regular meeting that's scheduled for Tuesday, December 2nd at 6:15 p.m. And this is what will be on the agenda for that meeting. First off, the board is going to do a site visit at 4:30 p.m. to the Brattleboro Police Substation, which is being constructed at 77 Flat Street, where the Brattleboro Transportation Center is. At the regular meeting, there are now 5 items on the consent agenda. The first is the DPW's winter de-icing salt contract. So what the department is proposing for a salt contract for this winter. A second-class liquor and tobacco license for J&K Grocery Store LLC. A notice of intent to convey an easement deed and surplus material to the Friends of West River Trail. A ratification of a transfer of funds to improve the return on investments for the town, and authorization to sign a loan agreement for a loan to do the Pleasant Valley secondary storage tank project. Under regular business on December 2nd, the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance will be presenting to the Select Board their annual update for what the DBA has been working on. They are going to stick around and join up with the Brattleboro Chamber of Commerce staff to then update the board on the Brattleboro Thrives initiative. Following that, there will be 3 general fund budget items. So an in-depth look at the Department of Public Works FY27 general fund budget, followed by an in-depth look at the Recreation and Parks fiscal 27 budget, and finally a look at the library's fiscal 27 general fund budget. After all those budget presentations, there will be 4 more items on the agenda. The first is health provider change. So this will be a discussion and ratification of a decision to move to a new health provider for the town employee healthcare coverage, followed by an item regarding the ballot for March and whether the select board will want to put a question regarding the representative town meeting on that ballot, then followed by a possible interim bylaw regarding social assistance, and there'll be a presentation by the planning staff for that. And finally, on the night of December 2nd, there will be a monthly fiscal 26 budget update through October. A couple of announcements. The Brattleboro Recreation and Parks Department is ringing in the holidays with special programs including Winter Mini Camp. Visit brattleboro.gov/recreation for more details about events and activities that are happening throughout December. The winter parking ban is now in effect through April 15th, 2026. Parking is prohibited on all public streets in Brattleboro between midnight and 7 a.m. The Transportation Center and other designated municipal lots remain available for overnight parking unless otherwise posted. Vehicles found in violation may be ticketed and towed at the owner's expense. Also, any vehicle that interferes with snow removal is subject to citation and removal as well. After a snowfall that requires cleanup, residents may park in the covered area of the Transportation Center. Overflow parking is allowed in the Preston lot, but vehicles there must be moved by 8 a.m. The winter parking ban is in effect regardless of weather conditions. That's it on announcements, and it's a recap of what's happening in town government in Brattleboro. Please reach out to me at the town manager's office or townmanager@brattleboro.gov if you have any suggestions for what you'd like to hear on the podcast, or if you want to discuss anything further. There's lots of additional information on the town website, brattleboro.gov, about what's discussed at the select board meeting, so please check in there for agendas, reports, and backup materials. Thank you everyone for listening, and check in again soon.